So welcome everyone. I think you're beginning to join us. It's great to have you with us. Please do type in the chat who you are and where you're from so that we can get a bit of a feel as to who's joining us today. And we'll wait a couple of minutes to make sure that everybody can join in. So please do type in the chat as you're joining us so that we can get a feel as to who's with us and where you're from. So welcome Lizzie from the UK, welcome Ornelia from Moldova and India, Parul from India, Chile, welcome Media, Melissa from the UK, Tracy from South Africa, good to see you. Several from India, Georgia, Hong Kong, London, UK Midlands, Korea, but from the UK, Korea, but in the UK. Great, more from Moldova, Indonesia. I love it as we begin to join and we can see so many people from around the world joining us. We'll leave it another minute just to see if other people join us. So welcome Anda from Spain and Sahar from Kuwait, Aneka from Mumbai. You're all very welcome. I'm just back from India, from Hyderabad and Ahmedabad, so I'm still on Indian time. So welcome. Good to see you, Sukhal from Bangladesh. Good to see you last week as well. Ghana, people from all over. So, okay, I think what we'll do is I think we'll start and then people will join us as they come in, because we know often people are joining a little bit late. So welcome, good morning, good afternoon, evening to everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on children's palliative care, and we're really pleased that you have been able to join us, and thank you for coming. So I think most of you know my name is Julia Downing. I'm the Chief Executive of the International Children's Palliative Care Network, and I welcome you to this session today. And I have other colleagues from ICPCN here with me, Alex Daniels and Lizzie Chambers. So this webinar is part of our ongoing series on children's palliative care. Up until now, we've been running them monthly on the third Thursday of a month at this time. We think we might just reduce it a bit to between 4 and 6 this year. So in each quarter or every couple of months. So do look out for our next invitation to our next webinar series. Just to let you know, the session is being recorded and we will share a link for the recording. It will be on our website as well. So if you've got colleagues who wanted to join and haven't been able to, then do please let them know that the session is being recorded. So in a minute, we're going to hear from James, but after that, there will be time for discussion and here we go, time for discussion, questions and answers. Now, as we're using the webinar facility, we do ask that you make your questions or your comments either through the Q&A or through the chat, and we'll be monitoring those questions and comments for the discussion later on. So I'd just like to start by introducing, that's just a reminder that the webinars are on the website. And then I'd just like to introduce our presenter today. So we're really pleased that James Norris is with us today. He's the founder of My Wishes and the Digital Legacy Association. He also has a post as a Digital Research Fellow at Michael Sobel House in the UK. So over the last 13 years, he's developed and explored the use of technology to help improve end-of-life communication, planning and care. And he launched the Digital Legacy Association in 2015 to support professionals and the general public in areas relating to digital assets planning and digital legacy. And I won't tell you more about that because I'm sure he's going to share about his work with the Digital Legacy Association and My Wishes. But he consults around the world in areas relating to death and the internet, and he provides leadership in areas relating to death, bereavement, technology and the internet on TV, online, print and scientific journals. And earlier this week I turned on the radio, on the BBC radio, to hear James speaking there. So he's often consulted around such issues. And he also has a post as the Design Research Fellow at the Velindre Cancer Centre in Cardiff, where he's been for the last 6 years. And having worked at Velindre many years ago, I know Velindre well. So thank you very much for joining us, James. I shall stop sharing my screen and I shall hand over to you.
Thanks a lot, Julia, and thank you so much for the invitation to join today. I'm going to share my screen now, and I hope that everyone can, with the magic of the World Wide Web, see my screens now. So
yeah, we can see.
Wonderful. So just to recap, yes, there's a number of different projects that I'm involved with, but ultimately I'm a end-of-life technologist. I don't know if there's many or any other end-of-life technologists who tried to improve communication and tried to improve aspects of advanced care planning and end-of-life planning through the use of technology, but I've been experimenting and working with this sector for probably 12 or 13 years now. So my story, my background story. So my dad died when I was 11 years old. And this is me here with the Michael Jordan hat and the Guns N' Roses t-shirt. And I was transitioning from liking Kylie Minogue and Jason Donovan to Guns N' Roses. And you can see from the shirt that I was wearing and I can't remember what it's called, like the lollipops, the Little Chef lollipops that we're all sporting here. Like at the time, it was a time when, you know, music for me was very, very important. So I remember, I recall, I'm not sure whether it was during my dad's funeral or afterwards, but I remember thinking that I don't want church music to be played at my funeral. I wanted Guns N' Roses to be played. So my funeral playlist was important for me. And that was my first ever time I'd thought about my own funeral as far as I can remember. And it was certainly the first time I'd ever kind of conceptualized any plans for what I wanted to happen. After, you know, I grew up into an adult, semi-adult, I then worked mostly within the kind of charity and health and technology sector. And eventually I set up the Digital Legacy Association, which launched in 2015, after being inspired by a wonderful video by Bob Monkhouse that we're not going to watch today, which is for the Give a Few Bob Foundation. And it starts by him saying, 3 years on, just when you thought it was safe to turn on your television, I'm back. And it's really powerful and poignant because it appears to have been created 3 years after his death. He's leant up against what appears to be his headstone, and he's telling guys of a certain age to get themselves tested for prostate cancer. And I thought, if Bob can pass down his words of wisdom using the medium of TV, now with social media, so Facebook and Twitter, we should all be able to say goodbye using the medium of social media in our own time and in our own way. So that led to the development of a tool called Dead Social, which ultimately was a Victorian memory box. So it is a way in which you created messages, you assign your digital executor. So this guy here, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but this is one of my brothers. This is my other brother. But both of them are digital executors. Should I die before either of them, they're able to administrate my goodbye messages, and my goodbye messages are sent out after I die. Now, that was part of Dead Social, and that's now of my wishes that we'll look at later. But ultimately, in short, I've been kind of exploring how we can improve end-of-life communication, how we can utilize existing technologies that exist. So whether it's Facebook, Twitter, Google, etc., and when the technologies aren't available, how we can create technologies that help us improve end-of-life communication. Today's objectives is for everybody who's attending to think about their own digital lives. So just by you being here on this webinar today, you have got a digital presence. You've got a digital know-how to be able to log into, in this case, a online platform enabled to access today's information. It will hopefully help empower you to think about the different platforms that you use and to empower you to make plans for the platforms that you use, the online accounts. And then once you as an individual has made plans for your own digital lives, be able to support the children, the young adults and the families that you support and that you serve within your own communities. And then finally, I hope that those of you who find the content engaging might reflect on what might need to change within your place of work, whether it's a clinical or community setting, to help better support patients, children, and families. So, theory. And I apologize if I speak very quickly. There's lots for us to get through to today. So I'm going to speak very, very quickly. So I apologize in advance for that. The internet. So the internet has changed the way in which we communicate, and the way in which technologies are mass adopted, so how they reach 1 million users, has been sped up ridiculously quickly. So it took many, many years for the phone, the traditional landline phone, to get 1 million users. But for Netflix, for example, it took 3.5 years. For Angry Birds, I think it was one of the latest Angry Birds, it took something like 30 days. So technology, the internet, has changed the way in which we communicate, and it's changing the way in which we think about and plan for death. So just to recap on the last 10 years, our money, the way in which we shop, the way in which we engage with media, whether it's streaming a movie instead of going down to Blockbuster Video and hiring a DVD or a VHS, everything is moving from this physical world to the digital world. And we're living in this middle section. It's like a state of flux where like the physical assets are increasingly moving to the digital side, so the digital assets. And this mess is being caused by the way in which we interact with media, the way in which we interact with our loved ones, the way in which businesses are moving from this physical to the digital, and laws, policies, many different things, even things such as social etiquette, it's in this area of mess at the moment. And it's important to understand this and to be able to support people with this area when we can. So we're going to look at two terms. The first term is digital legacy, and our digital legacy is ultimately what remains of us digitally once we die. and our digital footprint, so the interactions that we have whilst we're alive, helps to inform our digital legacy. Now, it's not the only part of our digital legacy. So if, for example, after I died, somebody was to write something on my Facebook account, or there was an online obituary, that would feed into my digital legacy. So I don't own it. Nobody owns a digital legacy, just like, nobody owns a legacy. If somebody's was nice during the course of their lives, and and that help to inform their legacy, then that will also inform their digital legacy. The two aren't independent of one another, they're intertwined. And the Digital Legacy Association run a survey most years called the Digital Death Survey, and we explore, attitudes and behaviors around death and the internet. And the last time we ran the survey, we asked, how familiar are you with the term digital legacy? And about 50% of people had, some kind of an understanding around this term. So this term is starting to get a bit more media interest. It is something that people are starting to talk about, and there's many different facets of digital legacy that people are starting to engage with. My housemate from university died nearly 10 years ago now. So on the left-hand side here, you can see Ben's Facebook account, and Ben's Facebook account forms part of his digital legacy. His Facebook account means more to me than where his ashes are scattered. And rather than go to a religious place of worship to remember Ben, I will go to his Facebook account. When we were at university, we didn't print out photos. We uploaded them to Facebook. Photos that he's uploaded are on his Facebook account. Messages that we've shared between us, so personal messages that no one else can see, are still available for me to read. And this is a memorial place for me to remember Ben. Over the last kind of few years, there's different sites. So you can go to funeral directors' websites, and on some of these websites, you've got memorial pages for loved ones, and it's suitable for some people, but for me, it's more suitable for me to go to where Ben used to interact with his loved ones. So because it's from my perspective, it's more organic. It's continuing bonds with Ben. It's continuing bonds on a platform that he was part of, and something that he invested his time and energy in, and then I'm able to continue on that platform. After Ben died, so this is for those of you who like football, including myself, fantasy football is a platform where at the beginning of each football season, you get X amount of virtual money, and you buy the players who you think will play well within the following season in the UK. So let's say, for example, you think that, I don't know, Haaland is going to play very well for Manchester City, and you might buy him as one of your players. And depending on how well Haaland plays during the season would depend on how many points he gets and how many, how well your team ultimately does within the league itself. Now, this league, it's been cropped off after 11 teams, and you can see my team here is number 8. However, there's like literally, I think 80 or 90 people in this league, and we're all friends of Ben, and Ben used to play this before he died. And it was set up by a friend of mine, so it wasn't set up by me. It's set up by a friend, for a mutual friend from university, and it allows us to continue bonds with Ben in a non-morbid, contextually relevant way to the person Ben was, and just as importantly, the people who we are. We've now raised, so this is an old screenshot, but as part of the Fantasy Football League, we've raised now more than £20,000 for the adult sudden death syndrome that was associated with and assigned to Ben. And, you know, it allows us to talk about Ben, it allows us to talk about football, it allows us to bring him into our daily lives, and at the same time raise money. Now, I'm sure that the Premiership, the Football League in the UK, has got no idea that, you know, this is being used as a fundraising tool. I'm sure they've got no idea that this is being used as part of a digital legacy way in which people remember and grieve and stay connected to their loved ones. But again, the Fantasy Football League means more to me than where Ben's ashes are scattered. It, again, for a variety of different reasons. So, you know, for many people, this digital life and the way in which we remember our loved ones online is important. We run a survey, again, most years, called the Digital Death Survey. And when we asked, if somebody you care about dies, how important is it for you to be able to view all of their social media accounts? And about 50% of people surveyed placed an importance on it. Now, going back to Ben, so if, for example, the person who was in charge of Ben's Facebook account thought, or Ben, before he died, thought, when I die, I want my Facebook account to be removed. He decided to make plans and to ensure that those photos and his content was deleted. That would obviously be his decision. It's his account. He's uploaded the photos, etc. However, me as, you know, a good friend and former housemate would feel perhaps areas of secondary loss because the photos that Ben has uploaded would mean I can no longer see those photos. The messages that we shared are no longer available to me, so it might have an impact on me. So when we think about planning about our digital lives and what happens, it's important not only to think about the value that somebody's digital assets and their digital legacy is for them, but also for their friendship groups, their family, etc. The second term we're going to look at is digital assets. So our digital assets are possessions that are purchased, stored, or available online. And digital assets might be photos that we take on our mobile phones. So we're taking more photos and videos than ever before. It might be songs that we've purchased through online streaming platforms, and it could be an array of different things. So they might be of sentimental value. So if we've taken photos of our children, our grandchildren, etc., it might be of sentimental value. If we've purchased them from a third party, let's say a movie, then it might not have sentimental value. It might just have a monetary value. However, if it's a video, let's say that you've purchased and it was a family film, then it might be of a sentimental and a monetary value. And our digital assets are increasingly being spread across a range of different digital devices. So perhaps our laptop, a tablet, a mobile phone, an old phone, hard drive. So these are physical devices, but they might also be spread across an array of different online cloud platforms, which might be social media sites, cloud storage sites, etc. And each one of these devices and each one of these online accounts might have its own password. You might have a different password for each, and they certainly all have their own what's known as a terms of service. So some of them will allow you perhaps to pass on access after you've died. Many of them haven't thought about passing on access after you've died, and then some might have thought about passing on access after you've died, but decided to ignore it in order for, you know, future generations to purchase the same media that you've already purchased. So the rules and regulations around these areas, in many regards, are still being formed. the terms of service is down to each platform and the agreement that you enter when you purchase some media or you upload a photo, a family photo. And, you know, it's becoming increasingly difficult to pass on your digital assets after you die. So whereas before the World Wide Web, let's say 20 years ago, your assets were physical assets. If you had a photo, you could pass it on. It could be replicated. You could put it in a picture frame. If you had a movie, it would be a cassette tape or a DVD. Again, it could be decided, it could be distributed. These things are becoming increasingly digitized and often becoming password protected with all of the other different aspects that make it harder to pass it on after you die. So we're going to look at a few different prompts and a few different things to think about. So the first question just for you to think about is, when did you last print a photograph that had you in it? So I'm not going to ask you to put anything in the chat, but just think about the last time that you printed a photo that had you in that photo. And there's a couple of photos here. So on the left-hand side, this is my great-grandparents from the Faroe Islands. This is the only photo that we've got of them. It has lasted 100 years due to the fact that it was printed many times. You can see here it's in the picture frame. So there were certain things that kind of helped ensure its longevity. On the right-hand side here, this is a photo of us from a family reunion many years ago, probably about 15 years ago. And this photo was shared between, you know, family members, and these were all descendants and partners, etc., from our great-grandparents. And we all came back to the Faroe Islands for this family reunion. But this photo has got longevity because it was shared digitally amongst attendees. So you've got the more traditional on the left and you know, the more recent on the right. Now, the ironic thing is, I've got both of these photos, but the photo that I have of the highest quality is of my great-grandparents, because it wasn't compressed on the internet, and it's been framed, and this version, I've got a much higher quality than the one on the right-hand side here. So when it comes to thinking about our digital legacy and the photos and the content that we create online, despite what many people in the media will tell you, there's no such thing as a digital afterlife. The only thing there is digital longevity. So just like this photo won't last forever, the photo that's been framed, all you can do is increase its longevity. So by uploading something to the internet, it's not going to last forever. The vast majority of photos and videos and information that's uploaded to the internet is held by corporations, and those corporations aren't there as guardians of your family tree and your digital legacy. They're there to make money. And if by them storing your photos and your videos and your messages and your content, you know, it's no longer profitable, there's no guarantee that it will remain. So you've only got to look at, for example, for those of you old enough to remember Flickr and MySpace, Flickr was like Instagram, and a few years ago, many of the photos that were uploaded to Flickr were disappeared because Flickr was no longer a viable business to continue in its current stance. And then those of you who remember MySpace, many videos and photos that were uploaded to the, and I quote, MySpace generation were lost when the content migrated from one server, so from one space to the next. So it's really important that we understand that the person who should be in charge of our digital assets and the photos and the videos that we create and our memories and everything else is us. We might rely on online platforms for them to be able to be viewed, but ultimately we are the guardians of our digital legacy. So, quick self-reflection task. So, following your death, would somebody...
James, not sure if it hasn't gone forward. Oh, that it has now.
Okay, wonderful. So, following your death, would somebody be able to access your mobile phone's phone book and be able to inform people about your death and perhaps invite them to your funeral? So for some people, digital legacy planning, the only thing that you need to do perhaps would be to pass on the password for your mobile phone in order for a loved one to be able to invite loved ones to that person's funeral. Would they be able to retrieve the photos that was taken on your mobile phone? So do they have the password to your mobile phone? If they do they also have the password for your computer and other devices that might be password protected? Would they be able to read the messages on your phone? And would you want them to? And just as importantly, would your friends and family who you shared intimate messages with be comfortable with your next of kin or your friend or your child or your grandchild reading through those messages and be able to have access to them? Would the person dealing with your online accounts, so the digital assets, the photos, the videos, etc., know which content was of sentimental value to you? And how would they know which photos to keep? So with us creating photos, taking photos of everything all the time, you know, how do people know which photos are important of you? Because, you know, after somebody dies, quite often the photos that are used about that person are whittled down to 10 or 20 photos at most. So out of all of these photos, how would somebody know which photos are important to you? And how might they know how to share those photos, both in the physical world and the digital world? So just to recap from this first section, our physical assets and our physical lives are increasingly moving and migrating over to the digital realm. And this area will continue to change. So the gravestone is an early piece of human technologies. Apologies. A piece of human technology is just calling. So a gravestone is a piece of human technology, as is the mobile phone, and this will continue to change. And as these technologies continue to change, so will social etiquette around these areas. So, you know, 20 years ago, you wouldn't have thought that somebody would be able to highlight certain aspects and share their stories online, but this is being enabled through the use of mainstream technologies. I'm going to share a very short snippet of this video, and just to give you a quick overview, this lady here lost her daughter, and she was created as a artificial intelligence and a VR video, which she was able to interact with both visually within a 360 environment and through touch, using some touch pads so she could touch her daughter. And I'm just going to go through this very quickly. And of course, there's in this circumstance, for example, there's many different ethical questions. There's a number of different questions around you know, the impact that this might have on the mother. But if we were to go back to the Victorian period, those same questions would have been asked from people who were taking photographs of loved ones. Obviously, this is more sensual, you know, it's, as well as being visual, it's touch. But as these technologies become more available, and you know, this technology that this lady is using is not high-tech technology, and the ways in which, you know, people can create avatars and you know, bring photos to life, you know, this isn't something that's sci-fi anymore. This is something that's here, and this is something that will impact you know, the way in which, you know, people will remember their loved ones. And we're at the start now of, with artificial intelligence, also known as AI, but also, you know, where we are with technology. Technology is going to drastically change the way in which we remember our loved ones. And, you know, these areas are going to start to get blurred. So going back to digital legacy, nobody owns their digital legacy, just like nobody owns their legacy. However, we can have influence within it. So the Digital Legacy Association was set up to raise awareness around the importance of planning for death in today's digital world. And we do this from, you know, raising awareness, educating, evoking relevant conversations, etc. We do it by engaging with the media. We do it by, you know, providing commentary. And ultimately, we argue that planning for our digital lives should form a holistic approach to advanced care planning. And that's been our #1 thing, really, since launching in 2015 at Hospice UK's conference. You know, it's something, it's not suitable for everybody, but it should form a holistic approach to advanced care planning. We do this, so we raise awareness. We've got a range of different tutorials on the Digital Legacy Association website. So there's a for the public section, and, you know, we break down the different platforms that are used within the UK, whether it's Facebook or Twitter, or the different devices that are used to help ensure that people understand this ever complex area. We help to explore social etiquette around death and the internet. So, for example, if I had to arrange Samuel Jackson's funeral, unfortunately, I'm not friends with Samuel, but if I had to arrange his funeral, I would be able to go to his Facebook account and his public profile photos and see which photos he has vetted already. So he's already, you know, liked them enough for them to be shown. And it's the same on Instagram, TikTok, etc. And I would be able to carry out a traditional task. So I would perhaps be able to write an obituary on my Facebook account, or if I had access to his Facebook account, write an obituary and say what has happened. I might make it public to make sure that people understand that Samuel's died, and then be able to send out those messages. So again, much of what we're doing in the digital realm isn't new. It's not reinventing the wheel. It's just moving stuff from the physical world to the digital world. Many of us now, you know, don't live and don't die in the places where we were born, and therefore, you know, the local newspaper isn't as important as it used to be. Our communities are increasingly online. And then when it comes to, you know, the social etiquette around posting online, you know, there's things to think about, you know, who should be the person who sends that out. So if you're a parent, you know, and you're expecting at some point in the near future that your child's at the end of their life, and that you're going to have to post something, or if you don't post something, somebody else will, you know, again, there's a social etiquette around this. But eventually, if nothing happens, somebody might post something onto that person's social networking site and announce it. So yeah, the social etiquette and hierarchy around doing this, you know, it's starting to change, it's starting to evolve. But yeah, it's important for professionals to understand this area, and for families and for parents and for children to understand that if nothing is said, eventually something will be said by their friends and family. The social etiquette, you know, this is just one example during COVID-19. So according to our survey, the Digital Death Survey, you know, the social etiquette around funeral streaming changed massively around COVID-19, because before it was almost like a sci-fi thing to have your funeral streamed. But during COVID, because people couldn't attend funerals, it became something a lot more mainstream. And it was actually one of the campaigns that the Digital Legacy Association kind of instigated, was trying to get funeral directors to have conversations around funeral streaming when family members were not able to attend in person. Again, the technology is there. It's not an expensive technology, but it's something that is available and when you know, society's attitudes change, it's important that professionals in this circumstance, funeral professionals, adapt their practice to help support society. WhatsApp messages are becoming increasingly important. So, you know, after somebody dies, their WhatsApp messages can become of huge value to loved ones. On the Digital Legacy Association website, there's a social media wheel template. It's free to download. It's an Excel document that allows people to make plans for their digital lives, and very, very simply, without putting their information into a third-party platform, you know, log all of their online accounts and make sure that, you know, their wishes are passed on. Professionals, we've got a range of different tutorials, and we've got a range of different resources that can be used and utilized by healthcare professionals, social care professionals, etc. We advise different governments around the importance of this area and different NGOs. All of our leaflets, everything on the Digital Legacy Association website is free. So posters, leaflets, they can all be downloaded. We've got this leaflet that's almost, it works like a trigger. We've got this localized into a range of different languages, large format, etc. So it can be used in different contexts. It can be put in hospice welcome packs. We support charities and provide content and resources for different charities who are trying to highlight the importance of digital assets and digital legacy. We don't have time to go through the conversations around, you know, how digital legacy conversations and digital asset conversations can be utilized for advanced care planning conversations, but there's a framework that we've produced that's free to download from the Digital Legacy Association website. I'm going to skip through a number of these different things. I know it's being filmed, so being a bit like Channel 4 way back when, you know, if you're filming this, it can be frozen, etc. But there's some digital legacy training slides that can be used and that can be utilized within your own environment. So if you want to help empower those who you work with around this area, very simple slides that can be used and downloaded. We've got copy on the website, again, around digital assets and digital legacy, which can be copied, pasted, images there, copyright-free content, again, to highlight the communities and the different demographics that you support about the importance of this area. We run a conference every year called the Digital Legacy Conference that highlights, you know, the importance of planning for death, and we celebrate the work that's being done by health and social care professionals within this area. We often partner with EAPC and different partners to help, you know, highlight the importance of this within different audiences. I've got very, very little amount of time now to just show you the very last part of what of today's presentation. I think I've got about 3 minutes. So My Wishes is a tool that we launched 3 years ago, and we ultimately, it helps society plan for death, and we use and utilize different aspects such as gamification, so making something that isn't fun, and making it accessible in different ways. So I'm going to quickly go to the live version and do literally, I think, the quickest demo I've ever done in my entire life. So this lady here, for example, her name's Kelly. This is her son, Bruno, and this version has been created for people living in Hillingdon. Every person in the UK can use My Wishes for free, but we hyper localize it for the needs of different areas. So in Hillingdon, for example, following a successful grant from Hospice UK, we created a version that helps improve people's well-being. We've reimagined different parts of well-being content, and made it accessible and relevant to people within the Hillingdon borough. So this is Nikki, who's the Trudio instructor, and we've kind of shot it on a green screen, again, making, you know, hospice content and well-being content accessible and interesting to the general public. When it comes to, again, people creating their advanced care plan, they can do things and say what they would like and what they wouldn't like, download it, save it, share it, send it to their GP, etc. When it comes to planning for your digital lives, again, our digital lives should form a holistic approach to advanced care planning. So in this circumstance, you've got Kelly. She might have a TikTok account. She might put in her details, make plans for it. She might be empowered and learn about what she can and can't do on the different platforms here. Save it, download the document, share it with her loved ones to make sure that her online accounts are sorted and that they are planned for. There's lots of other tools as well, so you can create your bucket list and different aspects. So with permission, many of you would have met and perhaps worked with Lucy Watts. So Lucy, as well as working with My Wishes and being a good friend, sent out and created a My Wishes account. She decided to share certain parts of her life publicly. So everybody on My Wishes gets a public handle. So hers mirrors her Twitter account. And for example, she's sent out a goodbye message and a happy birthday message to her sister. She created a bucket list, so things that she wanted to achieve and things that she didn't achieve. And she also created a funeral playlist for the songs that she wanted to have played at her funeral, many of which were played at her funeral and then at her memorial. And then in terms of, I'm not actually sure if Lucy used the postural care passport feature, but if she did, then, and if she had a postural care assessment, whether it's video, PDF, Word document, etc., it's rapidly available if she did through the interface as well. So let me just jump back. So we've looked at the digital legacy side. We've looked at how people can plan for their lives in different contexts. We had a quick look at the version that was created for Hillingdon. And I think at the very end now, and again, I know I've overran, so I'm going to be really, really quickly, but I'll be as quick as I can.
Don't worry, you're fine, James. It's fine.
Am I?
Yeah, you're okay. Don't worry.
How much time do I have, Julia?
Well, it's you've had about 45 minutes now, but you're okay for another 5 minutes or so.
Okay, so what we try to do is we try to be playful in different ways. So, for example, hopscotch is one of the most playful things. We've created a rollout banner again so that people can play hopscotch on the things that they have and haven't achieved. We look to try to, again, look at what the platforms that people are using and empower them to, in circumstances where they might not think that they can use these tools, use them. So, for example, if I was to have died yesterday and my friends, family, etc., were trying to work out which songs should be played at my funeral, they might not know which songs would be suitable for me. But what they could do is simply go to my Spotify account and click on the 25 most played songs. They could go to my Spotify or my iTunes account and click on my 25 most played songs. And from that, decide which songs might be suitable. So this content is already there. It's just a case of rethinking and recontextualizing that information for end of life and end of life planning. When it comes to arranging a funeral, so most people will still go to a funeral director, and the event, so the funeral will be posted in a local newspaper. But for many people, again, myself included, most of my friends and friendship groups might not read my local newspaper, and it might be more effective to create a funeral for me on Facebook. My brother, for example, might create it and then share it, or if he has access through Facebook's legacy contact, if I'd assigned him, which I have as my legacy contact, he could post that on my behalf. So, technology is here and we can utilize and we can think about these different things in different ways. Funeral directors quite often charge the general public to create I'm going to put this on silent. but they charge their clients to create a scrolling video of images of somebody who's died. And this can be created very, very easily without a funeral director using PowerPoint. If you've got PowerPoint, or today I'm using Google Slides, which is free. And I can create a number of slides, a number of photos, and instead of saving it as a .ppt, so a PowerPoint, you can save it as a .mov, so as a movie file. So you have a number of different videos, you save it, you export it, and it just creates it as a scrolling video. And not only is this free, so it reduces costs, but it can also be therapeutic because you are in control of that person's, in this case, part of their digital legacy and what's going to be shown at their funeral. So again, there's so many things that we can do with these technologies that are free to use, and technologies that we use every day. We just need to think about them in different contexts. Again, you can send out funeral messages via email. Now, 5 years ago, this wouldn't be, for many people, socially acceptable. But again, as social etiquette is changing, perhaps obviously you might not, for your closest friends and family, do this, but for a wider network of people, to make sure that loved ones are aware of somebody's passing, and and that they're aware of their funeral and when it's going to take place. You can do this, and you can do things like using general emails to inform people, just in a similar way to how you might knock on somebody's door beforehand when people lived in small knitted communities. You can do that using technology. Again, it's quite interesting to think about how we can use digital to reimagine traditional technologies and traditional ways of remembering, planning, grieving, etc. So for the National Day of Reflection, we, for example, created a virtual candle. So these are free to use, free to download. About 6 or 7 years ago, my nan burnt her house down because every year she would put a candle on the TV. She'd use a candle to remember our granddad. And on the anniversary of his death, she put it on the TV. It fell down behind the TV. I'm not sure if it got the curtains. I don't know how it happened, but ultimately it ended up burning down the entire house. And that was obviously a candle that had danger associated with it. Now, for the National Day of Reflection a few years ago, we thought about how we can use technology to, again, use a traditional way of remembering in a technology format. So everybody was stood on the doorsteps. Again, the wind might blow it down in certain circumstances, things around making sure that problems don't occur with a real flame, etc. So we simply created a number of different candles that can be used on different devices in different formats. They were used in hospices, they're used on phones, etc. To reimagine that aspect. During COVID-19 and the lockdowns that happened, so we're based at Harlington Hospice at Michael Sobel House, which is part of Harlington Hospice. And the project that we decided to explore and create, which won a Best Poster Award at ICPCN, was to provide patients with a 360 GoPro camera. We provided them with the support information, etc. They were able to take it home, film 3 conversations within their home, and that content was then able to be put into the 360 headset, which enabled patients who at the time were only allowed 1 visitor to have messages and be immersed within their own home. So we called it person-centered VR. It was responsive. It was using mainstream technology, not a high cost, something that, again, just thinking about what we can do to help improve aspects of end of life and communication around this area. Many, many years ago, before streaming was a thing, and I know Lizzie's on the call today, we've done a project with Together for Short Lives, which streamed the pantomime Cinderella from I think it was Broadway Barking Theatre to a number of different children's hospices at Christmas. Again, we were utilizing technology that was existed, and we kind of used that in the context of, in this case, in the context of Christmas. So to conclude, and I apologize once again for being over time, but and with all of the information that I've thrown at you and spoke very, very quickly. So things to think about. What plans do you, as a human being, as an individual, need to put in place to safeguard your own digital assets and digital legacy? How are the areas explored today of relevance to children, young people, and the communities that you serve? And what barriers might you need to overcome to better support patients, families, and loved ones with their digital assets planning and their digital legacy safeguarding? There's a few things that you might want to do. So we looked at, for example, the digital, the social media wheel that's available on the Digital Legacy Association website that can be downloaded. So you might want to make plans for yourself there. You might want to go to My Wishes and make plans for your digital lives. But once you've made plans for your own digital life, you might be able to use that as a referral point when supporting patients and families and children and young adults with their own digital lives. I haven't really spoken much about, the impact today from, what happens when plans aren't made, and the emotional impact. I've talked very much about the technology side, but I'd recommend listening to Joan Bakewell's We Need to Talk About Death, because that is a really wonderful, it's probably the best digital legacy program that's ever been released. It's an hour long, and it really talks about, the impacts that happens when plans aren't made. And like, as I say, today I've tried to throw the technology side and the thinking and the planning and the advanced care planning. But if you want to learn more from, that kind of humans, from a humanity perspective, I'd definitely recommend listening to Joan Bakewell's We Need to Talk About Death. So finally, thank you for your attention today. I hope it was of value, and I look forward to any questions that you might have over the next few minutes and however long people are available to talk for.
Thank you very much, James. That's really interesting and so much to think about in what you've talked about. I'm wondering perhaps if you can unshare your screen, and then we can head over to, I know there's various questions in the chat and in the question and answer, and I think Alex, you're going to help us in these discussions and questions.
Thanks, James. That was very informative and certainly quite a thought-provoking presentation. I love that you shared your personal story. Astounded at your insights as a young child, identifying your funeral playlist. And I love the fantasy football idea. Many people in the chat saying that digital legacy is a new idea for them. I think it's new for many of us. You've introduced us to many new concepts like, an end-of-life technologist, your digital legacy as a way of continuing bonds, and that, that we are guardians of our digital legacy. We have a question from Lizzie, who wants to know about the survey that you conducted, and did you get the responses from people from different cultures and backgrounds? Was it UK-based? Yeah, and I think it would be interesting to know whether if this were to be done globally, would the results reflect differently? So that's the first question, and maybe just give you another one to think about as well, from Dr. Daz, who wants to know about ownership rights. Who gets the ownership rights for the photos, the videos, once the person expires? Who is the right person to continue the expired person's legacy? So let's just leave that for there now.
Okay, so in terms of the digital death survey, I think the last response rate was about 350 people. It is a global survey. However, it is not, in my opinion, representative of you know, a global society, because it's an online survey. So we don't go into, you know, people who aren't online. So it's an online survey. And it really takes a benchmark, really, and we do have filters. So we do break it down by ethnicity and country and religious beliefs and a number of different things, even healthcare professionals. So we've got like a bit of a deep dive into terms of healthcare professionals' attitudes around this area as well, which has been really, really interesting. This year's survey is probably going to be released in the next, I'd say maybe a month and a half, 2 months time. So I hope that provides some context there. In terms of the
so James, is that something that perhaps we could share as ICPCN and share with all of our members around the world?
100%. Yeah, no, that would be wonderful. Like the more information we can get, and yeah, the better. It's all of the information is shared publicly. It's, you know, it's open source, and yeah, and it's there to help you know, improve people's thinking and understanding around this area. So that would be wonderful if that could.
Because I'm just thinking, for many of us here, we've said that this is all quite new to us, and so it would be good to begin to raise people's awarenesses a bit more about it.
Definitely. And I think when it comes to as well, when you're completing the survey and you're kind of looking and you're, you know, let's say, for example, there's a question about, would you like your Facebook account to remain open after you've died? It provokes thought, and hopefully it will also provoke action as well. So it's kind of, you know, it's something that not only provides from a theoretical and academic perspective value, but also to the person completing the form as well. Hopefully it provides value to them as an individual as well.
Yeah, I interrupted you.
Oh, no, thank you for the interruption. The second question was around ownership. So for example, if I take a photo on my mobile phone and it's saved here, I own this photo. If I've got a different device or I take a photo, I own that photo. If I upload it to a third-party platform, depending on which platform I've uploaded it to, will depend on what rights I give to that platform. So, for example, if you sometimes watch a news publication on the TV, and there will be a photo of somebody, and that will be not they wouldn't have granted permission, but perhaps the third-party platform, the social network, etc., who they've uploaded it to, has then granted permission to that person to access it. So when it comes to, you know, the ownership of photos, the ownership of the content, you know, it really varies on where you're uploading that content to. So each platform has its own terms of service, and depending on that terms of service will depend on how much rights you have for that photo, that video, that content, even that message that you've shared, because yeah, you have entered into an agreement to use their platform, let's say for free, but the value exchange for that platform is, okay, you're using our platform for free, you're staying connected, but we're going to use that message, or we own part of the content or something, which is that value exchange. So it's really important that, yeah, we understand that from a top line perspective, but when it comes to remembering our loved ones, again, it's really, really important, just to reiterate an earlier point, that, you know, these platforms aren't the guardians of our family history. They are companies, they are organizations. They will exist as long as they make money. So it's important that we understand this and make suitable plans for our digital lives and the content and the memories and anything that's important to us. We make relevant plans for us and the people we care about.
That's probably in the terms and conditions that many of us don't always read. in the small print, as we used to say.
Okay, so in the small print, there's a question about legal issues. Actually, two people are raising issues around legal. So what Mobasha wants to know about, what are the legal issues, which legal issues or what may come up for grieving family members against digital legacy? And Rex expands on that and wants to know also about legal issues and wishes considering different cultures, particularly in Africa, where families are much tied to their traditions. So your thoughts on that around legal issues? And if I can pop another question around from Sengun on consent and autonomy. How can we ensure that the process of creating a digital legacy for a child in palliative care respects the child's autonomy and is carried out with appropriate consent, especially when the child is too young or otherwise unable to give informed consent?
Okay, so in terms, okay, there's quite a few things there. So in terms of the last question, in terms of creating a digital legacy around a child before they turn the age of 18 and they provide consent. Yeah, so I mean it's hard because the parent might want to share photos, and there's a term, which is quite commonly used now called sharenting, when you upload photos of your children. They haven't given permission, but they're 1 year old, they're 2 years old, you're sharing photos of them. And you're doing that as a parent, and you're sharing it, so you're sharing that content. So in terms of from a legal perspective, to be honest, I'm not totally sure what the Law Society's position would be on uploading photos of children. If it's your own children, I don't think, as far as I'm aware, I haven't seen any legal cases against it. But I think it's down to the parent. I'm not sure when it comes to, let's say, an uncle or a friend or a family, how that all kind of, especially again down onto the different platforms, and how that relays within their own terms of service, because as mentioned earlier, each platform's got its own terms of service. And if you start uploading photos of somebody else without permission, what that is, because one platform will be different to the next. So in terms of that kind of the legal side for children and people under the age of 18, I'm not totally sure. The first, and can you just refresh me on what the first two questions related to? Sorry.
No problem.
I tried to deep dive in my mind to try and find an answer to that question, and I can't find it.
I think that's an ongoing challenge for us in children's palliative care, isn't it? That I don't know about other people, but many of the children that we care for are so much better at social media and technology than I am. And many of them will already be having TikTok and all sorts of things, particularly the adolescents and the young adults. And legal, I guess the legal framework is going to be slightly different in different countries. It is a challenge.
Yeah. And I think when it comes to the kind of culturally and within different countries, when you've got a platform that you're uploading content to, its terms of service does differ in different countries and in different cultures. So, for example, for the many social networks after the UK left the EU following Brexit, there was a number of different changes to the policies which allowed data to be shared in different ways. And that was something that was pushed through because we were no longer part of the same bloc within the EU. So from a country perspective, when it comes to digital legacy planning, digital legacy safeguarding, it relates to local law. And then when it relates to in terms of culture, I'm not sure in terms of, again, each platform's got its own ways in which it works, etc. But ultimately, the culture is defined on many of these platforms by the communities that are there. So, for example, in one country and with one person, the culture and the conversations would be very different to somebody else on a different platform due to their friendship groups, their belief structure, etc., etc. So, in terms of those conversations that might happen publicly, that's kind of there. And then from a country perspective, again, it's kind of based on local, in many circumstances, local law.
And I guess it's moving things from how things used to be done, kind of to more technological ways of doing them. So somebody's asked, is that similar to a memory box? That, we've quite for many years, put together memory boxes with photos of the children and maybe a list of music they like and toys and that sort of thing. And this is kind of like moving that in some ways online. You were giving an example of your playlist, and it just made me think my dad, when he died, he'd left a list of this was the music he wanted at his service, and this, so it's kind of similar, but it's moving it onto the digital, and the impact of that and what that means.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, 100%. And yeah, many of these things aren't reinventing the wheel. It's just moving it from the physical to the digital. Within the kind of traditional Victorian memory box, you might have a locket, I think lockets of hair and perfume. So you've got that stimuli, but the stimuli is based on, in this circumstance, let's say touch from the hair and smell from the perfume. Within the digital side, it might be auditable, so it might be a message, a audio message, it might be visual from a visual message. So again, it's not changing things, it's just changing some of the medium that's being used to remember somebody. So yeah, so it's not changing that kind of human behavior, it's utilizing behaviors that we've done for in this case more than 100 years, but bringing it into that digital side.
Yeah, just, context is so important. And a few people on the group just talking directly about that, Erin saying, and she's given us a link to an article here, that in some locations it is illegal to share photographs of your child without consent. And Sylvester talking about that, taboos and myths and misconceptions might often be a barrier in low middle income countries and communities. So the idea of creating photos or videos to upload for viewing during funerals and burials might go down well in some settings, but might be problematic in others. Sikil had raised earlier, had said that, and I think many people might feel that these are quite digital technologies, is quite a very advanced concept and might be difficult to adapt to a developing country setting. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about, how we might adapt how we might adapt this concept to a lesser resourced setting. Are you able to share some thoughts on that?
So I mean, I think when it comes to digital, I think things just take, and I know it sounds silly saying this, but it takes time. So for example, when my so when my nan died, for example, I wanted to take photos of the funeral, but I didn't feel like, and I had my camera phone, but I didn't feel like it was suitable to do so, because it just didn't feel right. And then a few years later, when a good friend of the family died, who was basically like a family member, I asked to take photos because that technology and taking photos was it was more acceptable. Like we've been, so I think when it comes to using technology, I think it just takes time, and there's so many different variables that come into play. So for example, so for me, it was the relationship with my loved ones who had died. That was the first one. If it was somebody who I wasn't so close with, I wouldn't have wanted to take photos. It was my relationship with technology, the amount of time that I'd been using a mobile phone and taking photos and feeling comfortable. It was my relationship with being able to speak to my in one circumstance, the partner or the wife of my loved one who had died, and asking if I could take photos. So there's these different things that kind of come into play that are both from a technology perspective, but then also a personal perspective. But when you're kind of, the more immersed you become in technology, the more it becomes normalized, and the more it becomes normalized to take photos every day and to do these things, the easier that these things become, and the easier it becomes to say, I don't know, film your own obituary. So for my funeral, I've filmed it once, believe it or not, despite my horrible sounding voice, I've created a song that I'm going to sing a song at my own funeral, and I filmed it once. I'm going to film it again. But you know, again, 5 years ago, if you said, James, you're going to sing at your own funeral, I'd be like, that's ridiculous. Of course I won't do that. If you said to me 15 years ago, James, you're going to be using a platform called Facebook or Twitter, and you're going to be saying how you're feeling on the internet, I'm going to be like, whoa, that's ridiculous. Of course I'm not going to do that. Like, that's crazy. Of course I'm not going to tell the world how I'm feeling. So these changes happen, and in some regards, like with the funeral streaming example that was given earlier, it happens rapidly and we don't even notice. And then, you know, as I say, with Facebook, if you said 20 years ago, 15 years ago, you're going to be telling people how you're feeling, you're going to be sharing photos on Instagram publicly, and people who you don't know can see it, it would have blown my mind. And I would have said, of course, I'm not going to do that. But that normalization has taken place. And alongside with the normalization of day-to-day life, when it comes to end-of-life planning, when it comes to remembering our loved ones, again, things like remembering our loved ones digitally is becoming normalized as well. And things such as I say, my housemate from university who we use fancy football to stay connected with him through a continuing bonds kind of in a continuing bonds way, that wouldn't have been available or even conceptualized, or something that we would have even been able to have imagined 10 years ago. So and when we're looking back, and when I'm looking back now and reflecting, I'm reflecting over the last 10 years. When we think forward and we look ahead at some of the examples earlier, so the AI example and some of the technologies that are now emerging rapidly, you know, it's going to be, the change is going to be absolutely huge in terms of, you know, remembering loved ones, planning, thinking, all of these different aspects. And many of the things that are going to happen, you know, we can't even conceptualize, because it's beyond our comprehension, and the technologies in some regards don't exist, but the social etiquette hasn't caught up with the technologies that still need to be produced. So it's yeah.
But from can I ask a very basic question?
Sorry, I've gone off on a tangent.
I have social media accounts, okay, on different platforms. I've never actually thought about, when I die, if I haven't shared the passwords and things, what happens to them? Does it just stay there, or do they get taken down? Or, you know, I've never really thought about that.
Okay, so without sounding like a politician, it depends on which platform you use. So for example,
I thought you'd say that.
yeah. So for example, on Facebook, you can assign a legacy contact, and a legacy contact, depending on what permissions you grant them, they can carry out certain tasks. So for example, if you are assigned a legacy contact, and after the person dies, so quite often with children and young adults, they're not friends with their parents. They're able to, if for example they've assigned their brother or partner as a legacy contact, they're able to add somebody to be their friend afterwards. They're able to download the photos, they're able to post a memorial message, they're able to convert that account from a live normal Facebook account to a tributes account, so people can use it like a memorial page. So that's one example with Facebook. With Google, you can do something called Google's Inactive Account Manager. There's something similar with Apple as well, where you can again assign a contact. So you can do these things at a top line level. And, you know, let's say, for example, my brothers, for example, are my Facebook legacy contacts. After I die, if, you know, they outlive me, they have access, they can do certain admin things on Facebook. They still don't know which photos of mine are my favorite photos. They don't know the stories behind them. They don't know what things are important to me. They don't know from this digital clutter. If I give them the password for my mobile phone and give them the password for my my computer, they might be able to access the however many tens of thousands of photos that I've got, but what are they going to do with them? So when it comes to, you know, thinking, curating, you know, creating stories, creating a legacy, you know, we can do this just like in a similar way to, you know, when you had a not a Facebook account, when you had a photo album, the most sentimental for many people, the most sentimental photos and are the ones that have got the messages written on the back of them, or the photo albums where it says this was, you know, Christmas 1987 or whatever it is, because it's got that context, it's got that personalization, and you can do that online as well. It's just, again, thinking about it and applying it. And it's, if you've got a photo album, it can be easier because, you know, you've printed out the photos. And let's say, for example, I printed out all of my photos from last year. I was diagnosed with a terminal illness, and I think, right, okay, I'm going to write a story and a narrative. It's there, it's ready for it to happen. But online, it's more segmented, it's harder. So, but it's again, it's thinking about the people who you want to tell the story to. It's the people. Do you want to print out the photos and put it in a photo album? Do you want to send it to 50 people so they've all got the stories of these things? And there isn't a right or wrong way. There's a multitude of different ways that we can do these things. It's just thinking, and you like starting that Pandora's box and just starting to think about it, and then conceptualizing what you might or might not want based on your own circumstances. So it's, you know, what matters most to me, who are my relationships, what stories do I want to tell, and telling them in a way that's suitable for you and for the recipients of you know, those stories as well.
Julia, I know we're sort of heading towards our last few minutes here, but quite a few people have asked James whether it would be possible to develop an app on Google Play, a digital legacy app on Google Play. So your thoughts on that? And then Lizzie, I don't know if you want to ask your question. Lizzie had a question about deep fake images and whether this would be a potential hazard to digital legacy.
No, hi, Dave. Yeah, I just it occurred to me that deepfake's such a big thing. It's always in the media, such a focus on it. I just wondered whether that had ever come up as an issue in your work. So
yes. So two things. So the first question in regards to a Google App Store. So in terms of, so my wishes is that it's a web-based app, so you can use that on any platform, and it's not dependent on downloading the app. When you do start to create native apps, especially when it comes to planning, let's say for Android or for iPhone, especially when it's kind of quite text heavy, it can be quite problematic to be filling in wishes, let's say advanced care planning or digital wills, within a small screen and with a small keyboard. In terms of deep fakes and AI, it's something that is, yeah, it's something that's becoming really prominent at the moment. So I mean, you could give the example, one of the first artists who was digitally reincarnated was the rapper Tupac. and Tupac performed at Coachella Music Festival, singing with Snoop Dogg on stage. Now, did Tupac give permission? Of course he didn't. So to begin with, that's being used. More recently, there was a interview with Cicely Saunders. It's an AI interview with Cicely Saunders, and there was questions that were being asked to the AI version of Cicely Saunders, and the AI version was providing information back. Now, obviously, Cicely Saunders didn't provide permission for that to happen. And from an ethical perspective, would she have wanted healthcare professionals to be asking her questions via an AI bot? Or would she have wanted people to have read her literature and to have watched the videos that are available on YouTube, where she's kind of articulated her thoughts, her feelings, etc. So, you know, when it comes to these kind of AI, whether it's a deep fake that's representing somebody visually, or trying to be that person, you know, it's really difficult. And when it comes to somebody's digital legacy, you've kind of got, you know, somebody's digital legacy, which might be messages that they've left behind. It might be content. It might be, you know, stuff that they've posted on Facebook, which is a reflection of their life, just like if you'd written something down. But then when it comes into, you know, using artificial intelligence and these deep fakes to kind of try to imagine what that person is, it will inform their digital legacy, but it's not their organic digital legacy. It's kind of something that a machine has created. So it's yeah, I mean, it's something that is fascinating, and it's something, you know, people will, I'm sure, start to ask people not to, let's say, for example, reimagine or reincarnate them within a digital form, because they don't want it, because it's not a true reflection of themselves. But it's something that, again, I mean, I'm sure that if somebody went to a third-party app that's probably freely available online now, and they said, give us pretend that you're, I don't know, Joe Biden, and tell us what your thoughts are on tomatoes, Joe Biden would be able to give a you know, this thing. And if Joe Biden had died, then it would, you know, form part of his digital legacy, perhaps. Like, it's, but it's, again, it's not true to the person he was. It's just scraping that information that's there. So, I mean,
I'm sure it will develop as the years go on. There'll be more applications for it.
And again, the social etiquette around these areas, I mean, it's because the technology is moving so fast, the social etiquette around these areas, again, is kind of, is trying to catch up. And, you know, one person's thinking and feelings and beliefs around sharing that content will be very different to somebody else's, based on a whole range of different variables.
I think it's fascinating. We need to come to a close, but, you know, working within children's palliative care, our young people, families, they're potentially going to be asking us questions and looking to us for guidance. And so it's really important that we think about this. I see Erin's she went onto the Facebook page and searched memorialization, which she eventually found. So, but I hadn't even thought about it, to be honest, until I met you. So thank you very much for a really interesting session. And I think it's given us all a lot to think about. And as somebody who has experience working in low-income settings as well as high-income settings, I can see how it can be of value in both, and how we can learn from each. So thank you very much, James, for sharing. And we'll put up on the website, alongside the recording, we'll put up links to your websites, and if there's any other resources you want to let us you know, let me know, and we can put links to those. So thank you very much for opening our eyes, I think, to this topic, really important for us in children's palliative care. I'd just like to say to everybody, just as we close, please complete the evaluation form at the close of the webinar. And also, if there's other topics that you want us to explore, please do let us know. We'll be putting up the recording and we'll be sorting out the certificates later. So give us sort of 24 to 48 hours to do that. We are in the process of organising our next webinar, so we will let you know what that's going to be on and when and how to register soon. So do please look out for that. But thank you all very much for being part of our discussions today, for all that you're doing within palliative care. We look forward to seeing you again soon. And thank you again, James, for your time and for tackling this really important topic for all of us. So take care, everybody, and keep well, and thank you.